So am I being filmed? Is it was involved in the stamp riots. One of the people who worked for the British government actually lived there, and they were protesting the Stamp Acts. One of the very first protests against the British government. Rhode Island was really early on in its protests. We had a number of things that predate the rest of the country. One is we declared our independence from Britain on May 4th, 1776, 2 months prior to the 4th of July. We do celebrate it. We celebrated it on the same day now, but we do have a lot of different traditions in early May to celebrate that as well, that are local Rhode Island. I'm not going to tell you. You got to be from Rhode Island. It's like a secret. The other thing was there was an event called the Burning of the Gaspee, which is a British schooner. They were here collecting taxes, and anyway, that was prior to the Boston Massacre. This was the actual first bloodshed of the British prior to the Revolution. And Rhode Island is also a focal point. You always hear about during the Revolution Philadelphia and Boston being like the two chief cities, but Newport was sandwiched right in the middle. Obviously, it was easy to get to by boat. So this here, anyway, this is where the British House of Government was. This dates to 1739, the Colony House. They actually met in that White Horse Tavern back there while they were building this. But this place is important for many things. Again, it was during the Revolution. It was the British's. That was their hospital, basically. And after the Revolution, it was our state house, and it was actually our state house back to back. They would flip-flop back and forth as to who was the capital of the state was between Rhode Island and Newport. You see the British architecture. If you've been to Independence Hall or Faneuil Hall in Boston, that's similar. The bricks are all laid perpendicular. Just a different style from American bricks, generally laid parallel. This place also held one of the most important things here was there was a celebratory ball, and the guest of honor was General Rochambeau and General Washington after the win at Yorktown. And I'm going to talk a lot about that because there's now as of 2009, an official national trail. It's a 2-year trail. It starts here in Newport and ends in Yorktown, Virginia. And it's called the March to Victory. It's what you know of already probably as the crossing of the Delaware, the long cold winter. But it's here where Rochambeau landed. He was dispatched by Louis XIV. You've heard of Lafayette. Lafayette was actually, he's who's known to be the French leader who helped us, and he did help us. He helped negotiate it, but he was only a teenager. And he had the ear of the king and many noblemen here. You see that sign there, W3R, that's the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route. And it's got the stripes representing the original colonies and the fleur de lis representing the union with France. Again, those signs go all the way to Yorktown, Virginia. This is called, right now it's called Washington Square, but this was the original town square. And there are when I was talking about separation of church and state and having a church front and center, there is no church on this square. There's no house of worship. There's only political buildings and commercial buildings. There were churches. I can't say that it was always like that. This was a church right here. This is a Greek Orthodox church on the right. At some point, someone said, "Let's make it official." Straight ahead, it's not the yellow building, but off to the right, you'll see that it beige with maroon trim. That's probably the most important house of worship built here in Newport. The reason is it's called the Toro Synagogue, which is the oldest synagogue in the United States, and it's the only colonial synagogue in the United States. It was actually founded by a group of Sephardic Jews fleeing the Portuguese Inquisition. And this was in Portugal, obviously. So they came in and settled as an affluent group of families, and they were running the ports. They were actually doing very well, very successful. And they were here, that congregation was here for about over 100 years. Up until the Revolution. They were actually loyalists to Britain. And when they lost, they left. They fled the congregation. So it actually was empty for almost 100 years. And General Washington himself, you can see, and they do tours Sunday through Friday. President Washington, actually at the time now, he wrote a letter directly to the Jewish people inviting them back here. and they reestablished this congregation eventually. So now this particular place houses a Jewish congregation here in Newport, and it has for the last, whatever that is, 100, 200 years. I can't do the math now in my head. But there's a little battle brewing between the old congregation out of New York and the new congregation. It's like a East Coast, West Coast rivalry. And the reason is the old congregation actually technically owns this place, and they're suing because this current congregation sold a couple bells, silver bells, amongst other things. But these two silver bells were sold to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston for $7 million. So that piqued their interest a little bit more than usual. And before we jump into the Gilded Age, jumping forward a couple hundred years, on the left is their original, that congregation's original burial ground. I believe it's the only colonial Jewish cemetery in the United States. I could be wrong, but it dates to 1677. And again, it's small because there was only there wasn't a large group of families, and again, they were only here to a certain point. Till the Revolution. So this is Bellevue Ave. This is again the beginning of the Gilded Age. On your right here, you have the Hotel Viking at 1 Bellevue Ave. That wasn't built until 1926, and it's built to house extra guests of the mansion. Some of them only had 20, 30 bedrooms. How could you possibly accommodate a proper party? This place here on the right is called the Gentleman's Reading Room. And if you're not familiar with what gentlemen do in a reading room, it's drink, smoke, and cavort. No reading is done in a reading room. Because there is a gentleman's reading room right across the street that was founded about 100 years earlier. It's one of the oldest open to the public libraries in the nation. And one of the only, I think there's less than 10, I can never pronounce it, Athenaeum. Check this place out on the right, I always forget it. This one on the left here, that's Richard Morris Hunt, who's the one who designed, he's the designer. He designed the Breakers, Marble House, so many others. The Biltmore Estate down in North Carolina. That was his first commission here. And this is kind of where he began. He was from Vermont, Richard Morris Hunt. On the right here, the U.S. Naval Academy. See the dates? 1861 to 1865. That's the Civil War. They are housed, the Naval Academy is in Annapolis, Maryland, but they temporarily relocated to Newport because they weren't assured of safety. So they brought the ships, the USS Constitution, the Baltic, up here to Newport. And the guys actually lived in the ship for a while. And then they rented out what was then there is called the Atlantic Hotel, and they rented it out. They went from living on a ship, being miserable, to living a lap of luxury here. So you can not like something. Look to the left. You see there. I don't want to skip this. Grass courts. It's the only place in the country you can play on grass courts. You can actually rent the course. That is part of the International Tennis Hall of Fame. The tennis club actually started here in just a couple of years after Wimbledon. Tennis is actually French anyway. It's not even. I always thought it was English, but it's French. And the U.S. Open was played here until it moved to Flushing in New York. On the right here, Jones Ave. Jones Ave is very important because, and this is, he started the Kingscote. Kingscote was the very first, what's known as an elaborate cottage, and it's on the right. You can't see too much of it here from the road, but this is still before this road was paved. This was built. He was a southern plantation owner from Savannah, Georgia. And he actually ended up selling it to the King family, and this is named after the King family, Kingscote. You see the date 1841. Again, that's very, very early on. The important thing is, again, that's really what kind of established the whole. And unfortunately, it was the triangular trade that had a lot to do with this. A lot of the southern plantation owners had heavy amount to do here in Newport, so there was an awful lot of Southerners coming here and building cottages, and that's the way it started, and then it ended up kind of being the New York kind of took it over after towards the later end of the Gilded Age, but originally it was the southern plantation owners that started up here. The other thing is other people started building elaborate cottages, and or otherwise known as Keeping Up with the Joneses. I don't know how people beep at a tour bus. How rude could you be? I don't understand it. He's from Rhode Island. But you get it, and like, I don't understand these people. See, I don't like him either. It's a free country, and I skipped the. He got me off the track there. The Isaac Bell House back there is what's known to be one of the very first American-style architecture, or like elaborate American architecture. It was inspirational to Frank Lloyd Wright. Most early American colonial, they're basically just built to heat their home, you know? That was more artistic. So on the right here, you have a place called, this is the Elms. Elms, again, is one of my personal favorites. Not just because of the place, the grounds. Has beautiful trees, fountains, a French sunken garden. The other thing, see the urns on the top of the wall? There's a man's face. The man's name is Berwind. And so Berwind, he was a coal magnate, and he was known as Nouveau Riche. And Nouveau Riche, they weren't taken in like old money, you know? Which I never understood the old money, new money thing. I will take any money. Doesn't matter what it is. Old, green, purple, whatever. PayPal, I don't care. But anyway, he put his face there to say to the people, I don't care what you like. You're going to see my face every time you come to Newport and every time you leave. So there. They ended up actually welcoming him. I can't do long words while I'm driving. This guy in the corner here is Mr. Belmont. Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont. He's the one who founded Belmont Steaks on Long Island. We saw American Pharaoh win the Triple Crown this year. And they're also responsible for digging the Cape Cod Canal. So if you've ever sat in traffic going to the Cape on the weekend, you can thank him. Anyone from Massachusetts here? Was there someone? No? No. Interesting. I like to make fun of the people from Massachusetts. That's the terrible thing. So who's next? Who's from Connecticut? Connecticut's next on my list. Anyone from Connecticut? Oh my God, I'm failing here miserably. Who next? New York? Oh my God, what are you guys, all from the Midwest? These are my highest amount of people come from New York, New Jersey.
They were just giving a warning. They were just giving a warning. Not like the other guy.
Say hello to safer streets.
This on the left here is Chateau Sumer. You see, it's a quite a beautiful place. This was actually built in 2 phases. The original was built in 1852 by a man named William Shepard Wetmore. He was from Vermont as well. And this was actually, it was redesigned in 1872 to make it a permanent residence. This is one of the very few permanent residents. The granddaughters ended up living here until this. One of them, Edith, lived there till the 60s. So there's an awful lot of history there. And when you go in and check it out, actually, if you check it out, there's actually 2 different phases to that building. And you can actually clearly see the 2 different phases. They didn't just kind of knock everything down and rebuild again. You can clearly see the 2 different parts. So it's kind of cool. On the left here, this is a park named after Olmsted. Olmsted is who designed Central Park in New York, a number of the road systems around this country. He designed a lot of the landscaping here. He's known as the grandfather of landscape architecture. He joked about it because there really shouldn't be such a thing as landscape architecture, but now there is. He was actually a civic designer. He designed layouts of roads and things like that. But people have the bucks. They pay him to do whatever he wants, I guess. He designed a lot of Newport, had a lot to do with the landscaping, the trees, even Ocean Drive. And I'll point out a couple that he had to do with. I'm actually going to go into Rosecliff now, and it's the only one that I can actually drive in. It's the only one on this tour that I actually drive into. And the reason I was saying that this would put it 4th or 5th, because you don't get to see an awful lot of Rosecliff. And a lot of it you do see right here on this tour. So in this, This is modeled after the Versailles in France. You see the front of the building is the opening scene of The Great Gatsby with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow. This was actually, they filmed True Lies here. They filmed Amistad. They filmed, what else? A movie called Betsy, and a movie called 27 Dresses, which is more recent. Yes, yes. And here in Marble House, a couple others.
There were Gatsby and DiCaprio too.
That wasn't both yet. No.
It says it was.
Does it? Where does it say that?
I
thought it was too.
Gatsby. And again, I mentioned frolicking, cavorting. If you need to know the difference, I'll explain it to you later. She was from her family actually was an Irish immigrants, and they didn't grow. They, what do you do with silver? They mine silver in Nevada. I like to say Nevada. And she was one of the only women to actually commission a mansion here. She had an awful lot to do with the, she was part of the event planning team. I'll mention a couple other women later. But when you mine for silver, you also come across all sorts of jewels for free. And what she used to do is give them out as party favors. She'd even place them in the food, a la Lucky Charms. So people ask you, who lives here? This is a common question. Who lives here? This right here on the right is a mansion. And this is mine? No. It's a 16-unit condominium now. So some of the larger ones, most of the really large mansions are unaffordable to most normal human beings. There are a couple exceptions coming up, but so they're split into condos or they're made into museums, like run by the Preservation Society or a hotel. There's about 5 really, really nice, fancy hotels here in Newport. And this is one of the exceptions, and these are known as. This is also like new money coming into Newport, which is wonderful. This place on the left was called the Astor's Beechwood. And excuse me one second. What is she asking her? It's my boss. Hello? What's up?